Today, we're diving into John Boyne's incredibly powerful novel, The Boy in the Striped Pyjamas. Now, this is a story that takes one of the darkest chapters in history and shows it to us through the innocent eyes of a child. And let me tell you, the result is just absolutely heartbreaking.
All right, so here's our roadmap for today. First, we're going to look at a boy's really unhappy move that kicks everything off. Then, we'll get into the friendship that blossoms across a fence. After that, we'll see how an innocent but fatal plan unfolds. We'll wrap up by talking about the big lessons from the story and, why this piece of history really matters.
So, at the very heart of this story, you've got two 9-year-old boys. On one side, there's Bruno, the son of a Nazi commandant, and on the other, Shmuel, a Jewish prisoner. I mean, their worlds could not be more different. Yeah, there's a barbed wire fence between them, but what's really dividing them, it's prejudice, it's ignorance, and it's just this crushing weight of history.
All right, Section 1, a boy's unhappy move. So we're going from a comfy home in Berlin to this strange new life at a place called Out With. Let's dive in, because the whole story really gets kicked into motion by this one huge, massive change in our main character Bruno's life.
So who is this kid Bruno? Well, we basically see the entire world through his eyes. He's your typical 9-year-old, He's curious, loves adventures. So just imagine, you're him. You have to leave your huge house in Berlin, sing goodbye to your 3 best friends, and move to this smaller, totally isolated place. He is not happy about it. And to make things weirder, he keeps seeing these people out his window, all wearing what he thinks are striped pajamas.
And the tension isn't just outside, it is brewing right inside Bruno's own family. You've got his father, a high-ranking Nazi commandant, super strict and all about his job. Then there's his mom, who's clearly unhappy with everything but is kind of choosing not to see what's really going on. His older sister, Gretel, she starts buying into all the Nazi propaganda. But then you have his grandmother, who is completely against what her son is doing. It's almost like the family itself is a tiny version of the massive conflict that's tearing the whole country apart.
Okay, on to Section 2, friendship across a fence. This is where 2 boys meet in, the most unlikely place imaginable. And this really gets us to the heart of the story. Bruno's bored, he's lonely, so he decides to do the one thing he was told not to do. He goes exploring. And that one decision leads him to the most important person he'll ever meet.
And their friendship just grows. It's so simple and so natural. It starts with Bruno just being bored and wandering off, but pretty soon these daily talks they have at the fence become like the most important part of their day. For both of them. And then Bruno starts bringing Shmuel food. And this isn't just about a snack, right? It's this small act of kindness, but it's also Bruno's way of showing he's starting to see that something is very wrong on Shmuel's side of the fence.
And this right here is such a perfect example of Bruno's innocence. He calls his new home Out With. He doesn't have a clue that he's actually mispronouncing Auschwitz, one of the most notorious concentration camps in history. That one little mistake, that childlike mispronunciation, it just constantly reminds us how huge the gap is between what Bruno thinks he's seeing and the horrific reality.
So this brings up a huge question, one that the book really wants us to think about. Why doesn't Bruno get what's really happening? I mean, is it just because he's a kid? Or is it because his family has wrapped him up in this protective bubble? It's such a crucial question, because the same innocence that lets this amazing friendship happen, well, that's the very thing that's going to lead both of them to tragedy.
Okay, Section 3, an innocent, fatal plan. This is where a promise to help a friend takes an absolutely tragic turn. The story is about to take its final and most dramatic turn. Bruno's friendship, his pure desire to help Shmuel, it pushes him to make a choice, and he has no idea what the consequences will be.
So let's look at Bruno's plan. From his point of view, it's totally logical. Step 1, get a pair of those striped pajamas from Shmuel. Step 2, dig a hole so he can sneak under the fence. Step 3, help Shmuel find his missing dad. To him, this isn't some life or death risk. It's just one last big adventure with his best friend, before he has to move away. It's a quest.
But the second he crawls under that fence, everything changes. The rules of his world, they just disappear. The boys are instantly swallowed up by the brutal reality of the camp. They're forced into a march with other prisoners, and just like that, they've lost all control.
And this is the devastating end. The guards march them into a building, and right up to the very last second, Bruno's innocence is still there. He actually thinks it's just a shelter to get out of the rain. But it's not. It's a gas chamber. And that's where he and Shmuel die. His innocent journey to help a friend ends in the exact same horrific way as it did for millions of real victims.
So, let's talk about the lessons from the story. Section 4 is all about understanding the book's really powerful themes. I mean, what is it that makes this story stick with you so long after you finish it? To figure that out, we've got to step back from the plot and really look at the big ideas the author is exploring.
First up, the theme of innocence. This is absolutely central to the whole story. Bruno isn't just a character, he's like a lens for us, the reader. Think about how he mispronounces the Führer as the Fury. It's perfect, right? He can sense the anger, he can sense the power, but he has no idea what it actually means. And it's this innocence that makes the horror of the adult world around him seem even more shocking.
And that adult world is completely driven by prejudice. I mean, this whole tragedy is fueled by this one hateful idea, this unfair dislike for a group of people just because of their religion. It's a prejudice that led to the Holocaust. But then you have Bruno and Shmuel's friendship. It's like this small, quiet rebellion against all of that. It's proof that a real human connection can just cut right through the hateful lines that people draw.
And you can really see how these ideas all fit together here. Yeah, friendship is the biggest piece of the pie, but look at how it's completely surrounded by these other powerful, darker themes. You just can't separate the friendship from the innocence that makes it possible, or from the prejudice that makes it so dangerous. It's all happening under the shadow of the Holocaust, and honestly, each one of these themes just makes the others hit that much harder. All right, our final section, why this history matters. This is all about connecting a fictional story to very, very real events. So let's talk about why a book like this is so important, why it's such a vital tool for helping us remember one of the darkest times in all of human history.
And this is something we always have to remember. This is a work of historical fiction. Bruno and Shmuel, they weren't real people. But the place, Auschwitz, that was terrifyingly real. What the author does is use their fictional story to give us a personal, human window into a historical event that's so huge, so horrific, that it can be really hard to wrap your head around otherwise.
And the sheer scale of it is just staggering. Millions of Jewish people were killed because of hatred and prejudice. And a number that big can almost feel abstract, you know? It's hard to grasp. But a story about two boys that helps us feel the weight of just two of those lost lives. And that, in turn, makes the whole enormous tragedy feel so much more real.
And The Boy in the Striped Pyjamas really stands with other incredibly important books that use stories to teach history. You know, you've got true stories like The Diary of Anne Frank, and other historical fiction like Number the Stars or The Book Thief. What all these stories do is make sure that we don't just learn the facts and dates. They help us understand the human cost.
So that leaves us with this final thought. How can one friendship, especially a fictional one, really help us remember history? Well, maybe it's because it forces us to look past the labels and see the individual human beings that prejudice tries so hard to make us forget. It's a powerful reminder that behind those staggering numbers are millions of individual people, millions of friendships, and millions of futures that were stolen. And it leaves us asking ourselves, what fences are still standing in our world today?